Breaking news. Breaking news. This one is a big one. This is definitely a big one. We have breaking news. Former Abercrombie and Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries arrested on SCX trafficking charges. This one is a big one. Let's talk about it.
Ooh, you are listening to the Billy Flint Experience.
Thank you so much for joining me once again. This is the Billy Flint Experience, and I am your host, Billy Flint. As we said, this breaking news just came in, and this one has the potential of being bigger than the Seab Diddy Combs debacle. As reported, we're gonna take our time on this because this is a big one. Okay, as reported to NBC News, of course, says that former Abercrombie and Fitch CEO Mike Jeffries arrested on SES trafficking charges. Jeffries, along with two associates, were arrested on SEX trafficking and interstate prostitution charges. We're going to go and listen to the news conference, and then we're going to come back with my commentary.
Good afternoon. I'm Breon Peace, the United States Attorney for the Eastern District of New York. Thank you all for joining us today. With me today are James Dennehy, Assistant Director in charge of the FBI's New York Field Office. We have Deputy Chief Carlos Ortiz, Commanding Officer of the NYPD Special Victims Unit. And we have my office's outstanding prosecution team, Aaron Reed, Megan Farrell, and Philip Pilmar. We're here today to announce the arrest and charging of three defendants. Former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, Michael Jeffries, Matthew Smith, and James Jacobson on charges of trafficking and engaging in interstate prostitution. Powerful individuals for too long have trafficked and abused for their own sexual pleasure young people with few resources in a dream of securing a successful career in fashion or entertainment. To anyone who thinks they can exploit and coerce others by using the so-called casting couch system, this case should serve as a warning. Prepare to trade that couch for a bed in federal prison. The message from today's prosecution is clear. Sexually exploiting vulnerable human beings is a crime, and doing so by dangling dreams of a future in fashion or modeling or any other business is no different. My office and our law enforcement partners will always prioritize standing up for victims, no matter their gender and no matter how powerful the wrongdoers think they are. We will hold them to account. As we allege in the indictment, between 1992 and 2014, Michael Jeffries was the Chief Executive Officer of Abercrombie and Fitch. Abercrombie was a widely known clothing retailer with stores around the world. Aspiring fashion models knew that a place on one of Abercrombie's iconic ads could be the ticket to success in the modeling industry. But while Jeffries was the CEO of one of the most recognizable clothing retailers in the world, he was using his power, his wealth, and his influence to traffic men for his own sexual pleasure and that of his romantic partner, Matthew Smith. The charging documents describe in graphic and disturbing detail the violent and exploitive acts these defendants perpetrated, for which they will now face justice in a court here in the Eastern District of New York. So here's what's alleged in the indictment. Jeffries and Smith employed James Jacobson to act as a recruiter to find men. Jacobson engaged in, quote, tryouts with men across the world where he would typically pay them to engage in sex acts with him. Following the tryouts with Jacobson, Smith would often then personally approve whether the men who were selected would meet Jeffries and Smith. The defendants would fly the selected men to Jeffries and Smith's homes in the Hamptons in New York City, or to hotels around the world in such places as England, France, Italy, Morocco, and St. Bart's, for the purpose of attending events to engage in commercial sex. But beyond simply hiring men for sex, Jeffries, Smith, and Jacobson used force, fraud, and coercion to traffic those men for their own sexual gratification. For example, as alleged, the defendants employed a referral system and an interview process that did not inform the men of the details of sex events before they attended, including the full extent and nature of the sexual activity that would be required of the men at these events. They caused the men to believe that attending these sex events could yield modeling opportunities with Abercrombie or otherwise benefit their careers. Smith and Jeffries employed a secret staff to operate these sex events. The staff ensured that the men signed non-disclosure agreements and handed over their personal items, such as their phones, before the start of the events to maintain the secrecy of these events. The defendants caused the men to believe that not complying with requests for certain sex acts during the events could harm their careers. The defendants pressured the men to consume alcohol, Viagra, and muscle relaxants known as poppers during the sex events. And they required the presence of staff during the sexual activity and ensured that the men did not leave the sex events until Jeffries and Smith decided that the sessions were over. Also, as alleged, on more than one occasion, Jeffries and Smith either directed others to inject or personally injected men with an erection-inducing substance for the purpose of causing the men to engage in sex acts the men were incapable of engaging in or unwilling to engage in. Additionally, the indictment alleges on more than one occasion when men did not or could not consent, Jeffries and Smith violated the bodily integrity of these men by subjecting them or continuing to subject them to invasive sexual and violent contact by body parts and other objects. As alleged in the indictment, Jeffries, Smith, and Jacobson didn't just carry this activity on a couple of occasions. Their sex trafficking and prostitution enterprise lasted at least from the end of 2008 until early 2015. During that period, the defendants hired dozens of men and transported them to New York and around the globe. They spent millions of dollars on a massive infrastructure to support this operation and maintain its secrecy. This included hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash for commercial sales, prolific amounts of money for staff to run the events, money for domestic travel, international travel, hotel rooms, services from a security company, and Jacobson's salary, among other things. Now, this investigation remains ongoing. Although there are 15 John Does identified as victims in this indictment, This interstate prostitution venture encompassed dozens and dozens of men. And I encourage anyone with information about this case, including anyone who was a victim of the defendant's alleged crimes, to contact the FBI. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Now I want to thank the victims who have already come forward for sharing their stories. Prosecutions like this are really impossible without the bravery of victims who are willing to report what happened to them to law enforcement. This office, Department of Justice, and its law enforcement partners will continue to work tirelessly to protect victims from powerful individuals who use their wealth and their influence to exploit and harm others for sexual gratification. In addition to my team, I'd like to give special thanks to FBI Special Agent Amanda Young and NYPD Detectives Paul Byrne and Antonio Gahn, who have worked hard on this investigation in the pursuit of justice.
Okay, so that was actually taken from a news conference that was held, I guess it was earlier today. And it seems like they're bringing down the whole corporation. Not only in America, in the United States, but across the world. Now, one thing I have to say, well, first of all, excuse the footage, the footage that I had provided here. It was really, really bad recording, and I wanted to actually get this uploaded as soon as possible because I just did a podcast earlier today, and we were on the subject once again of the allegations towards Seab Diddy Combs and his RICO case. But this one is bigger. And the reason I say it's bigger because we have what many people don't, probably a lot of people haven't heard or don't know much about Abercrombie and Fitch. It's a major clothing brand which started, I guess it was like 1992. They were in all the malls across America. And for those who remember, those who grew up during the time in the 90s, in the early 2000s, of going to actually a mall to shop for clothes, way before there was the internet and you can, kind of pretty much order your clothes online. But we would go to these, these high-end malls, and they would have this clothing store. And Abercrombie and Fitch was really geared towards the European American, young, teen, male and female. Those who remember, they would have ads, they were putting it right in everybody's faces, what they were about, what this organization or this fashion brand was about. And they would always have European American male, only European American male and females throughout their stores on these huge, what they were called at the time with photography, they were called dual tran posters with backlit lighting. So that's how you would recognize the store, because there was these huge posters of European American male, scantily clad without shirts on. And of course, European American females, teenagers, with, either in bathing suits or, again, scantily clad, very, very revealing. And I say this is big news because this is could be 10 times bigger than Seab Diddy Combs. And I have to say, which I'm going to read because I'm sorry for the audio. It was really, really poor quality. But I have to put this out. I have to say this right now. I want the same energy that everybody else has towards Seab Diddy Combs. I want the same energy that they had towards R. Kelly. I want the same energy that they had towards Bill Cosby. I want the same energy. All these European American content creators in the United States and across the pond in the UK. We have Sean. What is this guy's name? Make sure I pronounce his name right. Sean Atwood, and of course Piers Morgan. Okay, let's see if they do the deep dives on these alleged perpetrators behind this Abercrombie and Fitch allegations. Okay, now we're gonna go to, what is this? This is NBC News. And this is what they wrote. This is gonna, pretty much give more of a broader understanding of what's going on, because it's not only Mike Jeffries. It was his partner or his lover and another character that's behind all of this. So it says the former CEO of Abercrombie and Fitch, Mike Jeffries, has been arrested on sex trafficking and interstate prostitution charges, according to two senior law enforcement officials briefed on this matter. Jeffries has been arrested in West Palm Beach, Florida, with two other associates by the name of Matthew Smith of West Palm Beach and James Jacobson of Wisconsin were also arrested in connection with the sex trafficking charges. They are expected to appear in federal court in Florida and in Wisconsin today, which is Tuesday, and arraigned on a later date in the Eastern District of New York. Jeffries was the CEO of the popular clothing brand from 1992 to 2014. The U.S. attorneys for the Eastern District of New York will have a press conference on the charges Tuesday at noon, which was the day in which we just got through listening to. The U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Eastern District of New York. Okay, a federal indictment alleges Jeffries, along with Smith and Jacobson, operated an international sex trafficking and prostitution business from 2008 to 2015. It alleges they organized sex events, now get this, in England, France, Italy, Morocco, St. Bart's, and New York for Jeffrey Smith and others. They employed coerce, fraudulent, and deceptive tactics in connections with the recruitment, hiring, transportation, obtaining, maintaining, solicitation, and payment of the men to engage in commercial sex. The men who attended the events allegedly were led to believe that it could lead to modeling opportunities or help their careers, or that not complying with requests for certain acts during the sex events could harm their career. The men were required to sign non-disclosure agreements and surrender their wallets and cell phones during the events. Jeffrey Smith and Jacobson also allegedly recruited, hired, and paid on an exclusive set of household staff to facilitate and supervise the sex events. The staff provided Jeffrey Smith and the men who attended alcohol muscle relaxers known as poppers. Now, for those who don't know what poppers are, poppers is a stimulant. Well, not necessarily a stimulant, but a relaxing agent And this is going to be kind of graphic, but it's pretty much known in the homosexual community where they would do these poppers. It's a bottle where you would actually pop the top off. And the reason they call them poppers is because of the pop noise that it makes when you take the top off the bottle. And the liquid inside of the bottles, you would inhale it in each nostril and it will relax your body so you can engage in homosexual activity. So that's what poppers are. This particular muscle relaxant was really well known during the 70s and the disco era, right up until the 80s before the AIDS epidemic took place. Okay, that's from my knowledge of doing my research on what poppers were. Because I never heard of a popper. Very interesting. Okay, it continues. Lubricants, Viagra, and condoms among other items. Either Jacobson. See, I'm over it. I'm just like, this is mind blowing. I can't even get my words out. Either Jacobson or the staff paid the men for attending the SEX events, the indictment said. Jeffries, Smith, and Jacobson each face a single count of SEX trafficking as well as 15 counts of interstate prostitution tied to 15 alleged victims. The news of Jeffries' arrest comes 1 year after BBC News published an explosive report that said Jeffries exploited men and SEX parties he hosted. Okay, so this was way before the Sean Diddy debacle, but no one's heard anything about it. Very interesting. Keep that in mind. Continues. That report said 12 men described attended or organized events that included SEX acts for Jeffries and his partner Matthew Smith. And those events took place from 2009 to 2015. Some of the men who spoke to BBC said they were exploited or didn't participate willingly. Jeffries' attorney, Brian Bieber, interesting, told NBC News at the time that Jeffries would not comment on reports about his personal life. Abercrombie & Fitch said the company was appalled and disgusted by the allegations in the BBC report. Bieber told NBC News on Tuesday in response to the arrest, "We will respond in detail to the allegations after the indictment is unsealed, and when appropriate, but plans to do so in the courthouse, not the media." Shortly after that report, Abercrombie & Fitch and Jeffries were sued for allegedly turning a blind eye to Jeffries' alleged misconduct. That civil suit alleged in sexual abuse numerous men after luring them with the promise of coveted modeling contracts. Today's arrests are monumental for the aspiring male models who were victimized by these individuals. Attorney Brittany Henderson, who is representing victims from that class action lawsuit, said in a statement Tuesday. Their fight for justice does not end here, the statement said. We look forward to holding Abercrombie & Fitch liable for facilitating this terrible conduct and ensuring that this cannot happen again. And that's what the report says. Okay. Again, let's get into it. So we have these 3 different individuals. Let's see. Okay, let's see if they are put in jail. Let's see if they are put in jail without bail. Let's see if they are subjugated to the same treatment as Seab Diddy Combs. Now, mind you, this is not only these 3 individual gentlemen or monsters, whichever you want to use, but this is going across the whole of the fashion industry, because you don't only have these 3 individuals, but there's a possibility that you have modeling agencies involved. You have fashion photographers who are involved. You have art directors who are involved, and you have other models. Okay, so we have something much broader, something much larger than the Seab Combs situation. And I say that to say this, that I know a little something about the modeling industry, because while I was in Atlanta, Georgia, as a photographer, as a commercial photographer, I myself was a fashion photographer. And I worked for Ford Modeling Agency when they had an agency located in Atlanta, in Midtown Atlanta. And I used to always wonder, of course, there was a lot of, mainly women, mainly young girls. And I guess they started from the age of, 16 on up to about maybe 20, I would say, or 21. But the ones that stayed at this particular agency, because they had a housing complex at the agency, it was right in Midtown Atlanta. And they would house a lot of these girls. And I always thought that was pretty weird. I was like, where are the parents? I mean, the parents just let these girls come down. And of course, there were a host of different photographers that were on the call list to do or prepare these young ladies for their modeling career, in which we would photograph them and have their work printed for their portfolio so they can go on to modeling calls for whoever the clients were that needed models. I never had a blink of an eye of or I seen anything strange happening, but I used to always wonder, is so many young girls coming and going in the agency, and I used to always wonder, where's the parents at? There were no parents around. They would stay at the housing complex inside the agency. Of course, it was multi-floors. And then the housing, I guess, was on the top floor and the offices were on the bottom floor. And then photographers would come in. Of course, if you had a studio, I had a couple of studios in Atlanta. I had one. For those who were familiar with Atlanta, I had 2 different studios at one particular time. One of my studios was actually in Midtown on Ponce de Leon. It was called the Ford Factory Square. But my career didn't really take off until I actually moved downtown further on, I forgot what street it was, but it was right across the street from Grady Homes. And the name of this building was called the Brushwork Lofts. So that's where my career really blossomed and took off, and I was doing a lot more fashion photography. So photographers would go in, they will pick the models that they wanted to work with, or maybe the photographers were assigned to a certain model, and you would take them either back to your studio, you would take them on location, and you would do a photo shoot. After that, the models would go back. Now, personally, I never had any bad experience with models, because to me, it was always about business. I wanted to get my money. I wanted to get paid. So you always wanted to have a good working relations, not only with the agency, but with the models, because you got more work. Not only if your work was great, but if your attitude and you were a professional individual, you get more work. But again, I used to always wonder, like, where were the parents? Where, there's so many girls coming and going, so many young girls coming and going. I used to always wonder, where were the parents? And I used to always question, like, so they're staying here? Wow, okay. I thought it was weird, but again, I didn't see anything creepy. I didn't see anything out of order. But again, I say that to say that from this Abercrombie and Fitch allegations with these two monsters, because if people are gonna say Seab Diddy Combs is a evil individual, a monster, well then let's bring the party. Let's bring them all out. Let's parade them around in the streets and call them all out. That's my point. Because it seems as though there has been an insipid environment towards Seab Diddy Combs and all the allegations and all the lawsuits, all the civil lawsuits. As a matter of fact, there you go, Mr. Lawyer Extraordinaire from Houston, Texas, Tony Busby. Let's give him a round of applause. There you go. There's an alley-oop for you. So you got more clients. Let's see if you go after these victims. Because Abercrombie and Fitch is 10 times larger than Seab Diddy Combs. And these allegations are much bigger because you have an industry to go after. You have a multi-billion-dollar industry to go after. And it's not only Abercrombie and Fitch, as I said before, you have many smaller entities connected to this store brand. Again, you have other modeling agencies. You have possibly other photographers. You have, again, art directors, fashion illustrators. Who else is all involved? Designers, stylists, makeup artists. It goes deeper, much deeper. So again, I say that since this allegation has taken front stage, I want to see the same energy. I want to see all the content creators, and I want to see these other journalists on a wider scale, not only in America, but across the pond in England and in the UK. Let's see them drag these individuals and dive deep into their lives. That's what I want to see. We're going to keep an eye on this because, again, this is huge news. And I feel sorry for the victims that had, and it's interesting because it's at this time they're saying it's mostly male victims. And I don't know how many other females, or if there are any females connected to this, any younger at the time, younger female models that were connected to this. But again, it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Again, big news. Abercrombie and Fitch ex-CEO Mike Jeffries has been arrested today in New York for SEX trafficking and prostitution. Thank you once again for listening to the Billy Flynn Experience. I am your host, Billy Flynn. We shall be with you again soon. Enjoy your day.
Go on, you've got another 5 seconds. Say something outrageous.
You dirty bastard.
Go on, again.
You dirty fucker.
What a clever boy.
What a fucking rotter.
Well, that's it for tonight.